I mean, even for very fine actors, it is very difficult to just, as you say, to be shocked, because that first time you see something, there's an impact that you've then got to try and reproduce, and you've got to try and time it, and it becomes much more mechanical and much more technical. And since with film, unlike theatre, you only have to get it once, it just seems sensible that you film the shock. And you have to set it up so that the camera's in the right position, so that the person doesn't know what's going to happen exactly, and you just have to set it up right. Yes, there's been a number of shocks we've had. I'm trying to think of. Oh, well, did you see Land and Freedom here? Anybody see Land and Freedom this week? Yeah, I mean the scene at the end. Two things happened actually, which one thing that went right and one thing that went wrong, and it was very instructive. There's a scene at the end of the film when the militia, which is the volunteer militia, with anarchist socialist principles organized on a collective lines, is disarmed by the regular Republican Army, which is under the control of the Communist Party in this particular point. That was the essence of the conflict within the film. And what was very important, the militia just fought a battle. I mean, they'd been trounced in the battle. They'd been absolutely trashed. They were wounded. They were exhausted. They were completely knackered. They were on their backs in the field. And the regular army, uniforms, proper weapons, which the militia didn't have, were driving in, and the people from the militia thought that they were coming to support them. What the guys in the film didn't know was that this was the new army under the different control that were sent to take their weapons away and arrest their leaders. And I thought, if I tell them this, some weeks in advance or the day before, whatever, they're going to have to manufacture the outrage, because they'll get rid of it when I tell them that this is going to happen. Then they'll experience that rage. So I said, we'll shoot it and see what happens. Well, sorry, it's a long story, this, but they were on terraces, on a Spanish hillside on terraces. And the army were going to drive in on the top terrace, and the militia were down below. And there was another terrace below that. As Jim Allen had written the script, the army came in, and in the script they were meant to get their guns and point them straight away at the militia. Well, we got 3 cameras lined up so that I could get a loose shot and 2 closer shots of what happened, because I didn't know what was going to happen. One guy knew, and because he had a lot of lines, so I told him. None of the others knew. So we got the cameras, we rolled the cameras, the vans, the trucks drove in. Soldiers got out, got their weapons out, pointed them at the militia. We were turning. What are they going to do? They actually scarpered. And, of course, we couldn't shoot them. They scarpered to the terrace just below. And we ended up with 3 cameras shooting at an empty field. And what was interesting was that their instinct was right. And the script was wrong. And I wouldn't have realized this if we hadn't done that. Because what we had to do was we had to engage the militia in the instructions from the commanding officer of the new army, so that he engaged them and they came forward. And then he told them to disarm. And then they didn't. And then they pointed their guns. And then you could play the scene. So that was a shock where we really learned something from how it unfolded. Because the key thing is you trust the instinct of your actors. If you've got good actors, and their instinct is genuine, that's the best thing you've got every day you're making a film, is the instinct of the actor. And it seems to me, one of the points of directing is to make certain that you protect that instinct. Because if they are true to themselves, and in being true to themselves, they reveal the characters you want, then you can get something absolutely special. But if you do it in a technical way, you get a kind of defense, you get a facade, you get an invulnerability. And that, I think you can see that, and it's just not, you don't see into someone in the way in film acting you can really see into someone. So that's why it's important. And the second thing that happened on that day, which was an extraordinary day actually, an extraordinary day, because there with us was the guy whose story it was. And when we were writing the film, we didn't know how to end it, and we met this man who took us around parts of Spain and told us his story. He'd had to live in France during Franco, and he'd come back. An amazing man, a brilliant old guy. And this actual event happened to him. He was one of those militiamen who was arrested and disarmed. And the second thing that happened was that the leading girl had to die. And she didn't know she had to die. So I had to take her to one side and I say, Rosanna, look, I'm really sorry, but you've got to die now. And she said, I don't want to. And I said, look, I'm really sorry, but, you know, it is in the script. And anyway, but no one else knew. And, of course, by that time, we were 6 weeks into the shooting. I mean, everybody was it had been a really tough shoot, and everybody was very strongly bonded together. And the way the scene worked was that one of the militia, in disgust of what he was being told, fired his gun in the air as an act of defiance. One of the regular soldiers, thinking that they were going to start firing, opened fire and pointed his gun and shot at this guy. But in the intervening seconds, Rosanna rushed over to this guy to tell him to put his gun down. So she was in the line of fire, and she got killed. And the rest of the militia didn't know. And what we wanted from that scene, again, was absolute abject grief and rage. And because it happened like that, it touched something in their guts, really. Not thinking it, but just a response. And so, you know, the fact that a lot of them were in tears, a lot of them were raging, a lot of them were defiant. In a way, it was that sort of sporadic, disorganized outpouring of grief that, you know, I think, well, it felt to us that we got it. And I think if I'd told them to do it, it wouldn't have worked. It had to come from them. So that's why it's... Sorry.